My name is Helen Damon Moore, and I am the Director of Service and Education at the Tucker Foundation here at Dartmouth College. I am honored to welcome you all and to introduce Jon Kabat-Zinn on behalf of the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center Palliative Care Service, the Tucker Foundation, the Rubin Committee of Dartmouth College, Alice Peck Day Hospital, Dartmouth Medical School, the Norris Cotton Cancer Center, and the Valley Insight Meditation Society. Special thanks to Ira Byock and Yvonne Corbet and the Palliative Care Service for partnering on this project, and to those at Tucker who have worked so hard and who are this week celebrating the 60th anniversary year of the Tucker Foundation, Dartmouth Center for Service, Spirituality, and Social Justice. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn to Dartmouth College today for the second time. Kabat-Zinn first visited Dartmouth in the summer of 1984, when the college and the Connecticut River served as the training camp for the men's Olympic rowing team. He was the meditation trainer for the team, helping them to optimize their mental performance. Today, he is here to help optimize our performance. Jon Kabat-Zinn holds a PhD in molecular biology from MIT. He is professor of medicine emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Medical School and founder of the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society, and its Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Clinic. He is the author of numerous best-selling books, including Full Catastrophe Living, Wherever You Go, There You Are, Coming to Our Senses, and The Mindful Way Through Depression, co-authored with Williams, Teasdale, and Siegel. Dr. Kabat-Zinn's research focuses on mind-body interactions for healing and on the clinical applications and cost-effectiveness of mindfulness training for people with chronic pain and stress-related disorders, including the effects of mindfulness-based stress reduction on the brain. His current projects include editing The Mind's Own Physician with Richard Davidson and guest co-editing with Mark Williams, a special issue of the journal Contemporary Buddhism. Dr. Kabat-Zinn's work has contributed hugely to a growing movement of mindfulness in mainstream institutions such as medicine, psychology, healthcare, schools and colleges, corporations, prisons, and professional sports. Courtesy of Carrie Jo Grant, here in our Student Health Promotion Department, Dr. Kabat-Zinn and his work have even made their way to the inside of our bathroom doors, featured as they are in the current edition of the Dartmouth College Stall Street Journal. Please join me in welcoming Jon Kabat-Zinn back to Dartmouth College.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a delight to be here. Do I have to have the light this bright in my eyes? Because maybe you could tone it down a little bit so that people can still see me, but I'd like to be able to see you too. It's a delight to be here. It's nice to walk into a theater where mindfulness is on the marquee. You know you've really made it when it's on the marquee along with Frankenstein. I mean, it's like, it's like you're part of the mainstream, so to speak, however that goes from moment to moment and from day to day. But it's really a delight to be here. And I am here basically because of Helen Damon Moore and her work, which I got to actually see at the University of Iowa when she was at Iowa before coming here. And also Dr. Ira Byock, who I met in Ireland about 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago. And I was just incredibly impressed on what he's doing with integrative medicine and palliative care. And so, it's like I don't live that far from this place. And I got in the car this morning and drove up. And I'm really happy to be here for the next 3 days. And, so to have this many people come out at 4:30 on a sunny afternoon after the kind of winter that we've had to a talk about mindfulness is really some kind of indicator that something has shifted in the society. You all have better things to do, I'm sure, this afternoon than to come here, unless you have some kind of real intuition about what the healing power of mindfulness might be. And then it might actually be incredibly valuable to spend the end of a nice sunny Thursday afternoon here together. So this talk is really not about me or what I have to say. It's about us. It's about every single one of us, and in some sense, what the potential is, as the slide says, for living your moments as if they really mattered. And I put a little asterisk in there, just kind of an aside, and they actually do. And the reason they do is because we're only alive when we're alive. This seems kind of a no-brainer, but you could say that a lot of our lives we're walking around with a no-brainer, or just basically no brain, or the brain is on autopilot or something like that. And what mindfulness really is about is bringing it back online, so to speak, in the present moment, because that turns out to be the only moment any of us ever have. But we're so good at thinking, so incredibly good at thinking, that we can spend enormous amounts of our time and energy absorbed in the past. Have you noticed that? Like, just incredible preoccupations about who's to blame for why it's like this, or how great it was in the good old days and why can't it be that way now? So there's a tremendous attraction to the past, or a tremendous aversion, but whether it's attraction or aversion, we spend a lot of time there. Would you agree? Have you noticed that a lot of the time, if you check on what your mind is up to, it's up to memory. It's up to thinking about things that are already over to a large degree. The other favorite preoccupation of the mind is in the opposite direction, the future. And if, again, you check in every once in a while, just to, sometimes I like to say, you can call yourself up. You may have to, because we're on 24/7. We're just infinitely connected. Probably every single person has one of these in pocket. I hope there are some exceptions, but and they're called smart phones, but they're not. But they can really dumb us down, because we can be infinitely connected everywhere except here. And so we may need to call ourselves up every once in a while. Hello, John, are you actually here? And the answer is no, I'm off in the future thinking. And what are our favorite preoccupations? And by the way, of course, you'll get a bill from AT&T or Verizon. But seriously, what are our favorite preoccupations in the future? Well, one is worrying. I don't know about in the North Country. Maybe you've gone beyond worrying, but in the rest of the world, a lot of worry about things that haven't happened yet and may never happen. In fact, Mark Twain is famous for having said, and you've probably heard this in a lot of different sort of guises, but he's famous for having said, there's been a huge amount of tragedy in my life, and some of it actually happened. But there is this sayings that, we die, he died 1,000 deaths. I mean, we drive ourselves crazy over things that are not going to be happening because we're not smart enough to actually forecast the future. But that doesn't prevent us from driving ourselves crazy and perseverating over and over and over again about what will happen. And then something else happens because we're not that smart. So something else happens, and we say we're blindsided. Now, how many of you would like the future to be different from the way we think it's going to turn out? Anybody ever find yourself wishing the future was going to be like majorly different, that we'd make some kind of change in the world? Raise your hands. I want to just feel in the audience. So, okay, I heard social justice mentioned earlier, and this is, after all, a university, or I guess you call yourself a college, but a campus kind of situation. So it doesn't surprise me, but this kind of engagement really requires thinking about what it means to make the future different. How can we possibly apply any leverage? Could we find an Archimedes, fulcrum in which to influence the future? There's only one fulcrum that I know of for that, and that is the present. Because guess what? We're living in the future of every single moment in all of our lives that came before this one. Do you remember back? I mean, I see that it's a kind of a range of ages, although most of you don't look like you're college students, I gotta say. And I'm a little disappointed. I mean, not that I'm disappointed that you came, but I'd like to see a lot more college students. They're going to Frankenstein probably later. It's an awkward time of day for the young people. How many of you are under 25? 25 or under, is it? Oh, so I'm wrong. That's really nice to be wrong. So, really. So I was going to say to the older people, but maybe you did it when you were even younger. Do you remember before you came to college here? And probably you got into planning what the courses were that you were going to take when you got a hold of the catalog, or you went online and you began planning, in the freshman year I'll take this, and sophomore year and the junior year. And then maybe you planned even who you're going to meet and who you might marry and what your children will look like. And does that sound familiar? That, sometimes we do that when we're young. And then we think that it's all going to turn out in the future. So no matter what your age is, I've got news for you. This is it. It already turned out. And how did it turn out? It turned out just like this. In this moment, your life is just like this. Not happy with it, a little bit sad or depressed or wishing it was different. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Because we can always sort of feel like, okay, how are we going to be in relationship to this? And of course, life is not easy. And a lot of times we're faced with enormous challenges, sometimes with enormous pain, sometimes with enormous threat. And that's part of the human condition. But the real interesting question when it concerns, say, the future, and concerns living as if life really mattered, is can we actually be in the present moment when things are kind of not the way we thought they would be? Or, sometimes the shorthand for it is, well, I didn't sign up for this. Or another way to put it, sometimes maybe no offense meant, but how did I get born into this family? Or who are all these crazy people? Why am I the only sane person? And when you're in a family, no one else can know the kind of genetic disease of that particular family that, that everybody suffers from except you. So if we hope for the future to be different, the only place we have to stand is now. Because, first of all, it's the future of all the moments that have come before. So if you want to be in the future, here you are. This is actually non-trivial. It's not just, tell us something interesting. because what it invites is a kind of shift in perception and a shift in awareness, a shift in consciousness that allows us to actually live our lives as if they really mattered in the only moment we ever have. And part of that means being embodied. Because a lot of the time, we are lost in thought. That's another thing you'll notice if you start to pay attention to your mind, is that it's all over the place. It's all over the place. You don't even have to meditate for that to happen. It's its default mode. It's default mode. You don't even have to have a smartphone. You don't even have to have email. You don't even have to have a computer. It's the default mode of the mind to be all over the place. It thinks this and it thinks that. And it likes this and it hates that. And it's like, wants to approach this, but really wants to stay away from that. And it's like wired into our biology. That's called the approach avoidance. And it's kind of, the hemispheres are actually somewhat divided in terms of left hemisphere in the frontal cortical region is more approach related. And right activation, more, and that's one of the fundamental biological, features of living systems. Move towards food, move away from danger. Perfectly natural. But how we actually modulate those impulses and those reflexes and those, kinds of unconscious urges that drive us and that cause us to be reactive a lot of the time is really an art form. It's the art, if you will, of living our lives as if they really mattered. And when we begin to actually drop in on ourselves, and I brought a few props, So sometimes I said, when we begin to drop in on ourselves, we can actually reclaim this moment in this body, with this heart, with this mind, and begin to shift the default setting on how we live our lives. Begin to actually move in a direction of greater balance of mind, greater groundedness in the body, greater clarity of sight, greater, if you will, recognition of what's actually unfolding moment by moment, that's not so conditioned by whether it's we like it or not. Because the world, maybe you haven't noticed this yet, but it's not actually organized around you being the center of the universe. I know that's really disappointing because I'm guessing now, don't take offense again, but I'm guessing that you are entirely organized around you being the center of the universe. Every single one of us is. It's almost unavoidable. It's almost unavoidable. And that actually has representations in the brain, it's turning out. That there are medial networks in the frontal cortex, and that is actually called the default mode. And it's what they think, neuroscientists think, is what's happening when you're not doing anything. Well, it turns out when you're not doing anything, you're very busy. You're very, very, very busy. And one of the ways that's described is that your mind is wandering. And now there's an entire field in neuroscience focused on mind wandering. How many of you have noticed that your mind sometimes just has a life of its own? It goes here, it goes there. It's like, loves to be entertained. It's very entertaining. So yeah, that's what's called the default mode now. And another name for it is the narrative network. So it's like we're continually constructing narratives about ourselves. I mean, after all, it's the favorite topic, right? Me. What could be more interesting than me? The story of me, starring me. And if you start to pay attention, because what we're talking about, what mindfulness is, it's actually awareness. Okay? And it's cultivated by paying attention. So just to get clear about this, that doesn't sound very Buddhist, does it, so far? Or very Asian, or very mystical, or very, anything. I mean, it's just paying attention. That's what how many teachers are there in the audience? Whatever level you're teaching at. Raise your hand so I can feel it. Okay, don't you want your students to pay attention? It's non-trivial to get them to pay attention. First, you might have to be interesting. That itself is a challenge. Second, you might have to make the subject matter interesting. That's also a challenge. But third, it's like, I remember as a product of the New York public schools, having teachers actually yell at us to pay attention. But that's not a very effective way to get people to pay attention, because it turns out that attending is something that you need to learn. It's a learnable skill. But instead of being taught to pay attention, you just told to pay attention. Get with the program, pay attention. And a lot of people pay attention very differently. Some pay attention auditorily. They're really predominantly auditory. Other people can't do auditory so well. They got to see it visually. Other people's more intuitive. They feel it, with their bodies in a certain way. So this is incredibly important in education at all levels, because as they say about orchestras, even the greatest of orchestras, with the greatest musicians, with the greatest instruments, playing the greatest music, before they perform, they get together and they tune their instruments. First to themselves, then with each other, until there's a kind of dropping, if you don't mind me put it that way, into kind of resonance, call it an A, or call it what you like, but a kind of interconnected feeling that we are in some space together. You could call it relationality. And so mindfulness is the awareness that arises by paying attention on purpose in the present moment. Paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. Now, non-judgmentally, that's the kicker, because as I said, the default network is operating constantly, and the default network's got ideas and opinions about everything. It's judging constantly. So non-judgmentally doesn't mean that you won't be judging when you actually start to pay attention to what's on your mind or what's going on in your life, but that you'll notice how much you are judging, how much you want to approach this and push away that, and you'll just allow that whole thing to be there as if you just put out the welcome mat for it. Okay, I'm not going to have an opinion about my opinions. I'm going to just let it all rain down for a moment. Can you feel how radical a shift that would be in your life? To just take one moment and allow everything to be as it is, instead of wishing it was one way or another? The Buddhists would call that liberation. It's a kind of freedom that no one else can give you, but that allows us to, in some sense, rotate in consciousness so that for one moment, we're stepping outside of time. Because if you live in the now, well, maybe you've had this experience. Just check your watch and take a look right now. And what time is it? I'll tell you what time it is. It's now. And every time you check your watch or your phone, it's now again. Now, why am I even talking about this? Why did I even come here? It's always good to ask those questions. It's like, I don't know, actually. Because it's usually bigger than whatever you think, your reasons for it are. But it has a lot to do with the medical school and with what Ira's doing there, and with what Helen is doing in the undergraduate school. It has to do with the fact that the society has reached a point where we're beginning to understand that the exponentially increasing levels of stress in medicine, in our professional lives, in our personal lives, at every age, really require some kind of shift that is not in the form of taking some pill to numb yourself out to it or get it together, but that actually we need to cultivate what's often spoken of as the domain of being in order to not be so overwhelmed by all the doing and the performing. And while it's true that with the Olympic team, we were using mindfulness to actually improve their performance, it was a kind of Zen operation in the sense that you can't improve performance by trying to improve performance, especially with the mind, because the kind of mind that's grasping for an outcome is exactly the kind of mind that gets in the way of any desirable outcome. Have you got that? Did you catch that as it flew by? Okay. So this means we're in new territory. One example, a common example. You can't get to sleep by forcing yourself to get to sleep, by telling yourself how important the meeting is you have tomorrow. In fact, that's probably a very bad idea because that thought will actually secrete one more thought about the meeting or the stakes of it, and then that will lead to something else in this default network of mind wandering, and pretty soon you are wide awake, desperately wanting to be asleep and not knowing how to get there. Okay? So it's non-trivial to actually befriend our own minds and our own lives in such a way that we can actually work in these paradoxical ways where striving won't do it. Striving won't do it. That doesn't mean that I'm advocating that all of us abandon ambition or don't care about anything. Meditation is not about becoming stupid. Even being non-judgmental is not about becoming stupid. It can sound like, well, don't judge anything, maybe I'll just walk off the stage and break my leg, No, I'm aware that the edge of the stage is here, and if I do fall off the stage and break my leg, it will have been a moment of mindlessness or out of touchness, if you will. Or walk across the street without looking because, we have this sense that, we're not going to judge that truck coming at me, It's like, there's a big difference between between judgment and discernment. So mindfulness is all about discerning with clarity what's actually going on. Now, most of the time now, how many of you would say that you are engaged in some kind of way that doesn't feel all that good? A lot of the time in multitasking. Anybody find yourself multitasking? Confess. That when you're on the phone, you're actually sending an email to somebody else. Anybody ever do that? Raise your hands. I want to see. Confession time. Okay, and we actually do it a lot. Why? Part of it is that is really because we're so stressed. We don't have enough moments in our day to get it all done, so we start to discombobulate a little bit and juggle and cut corners. And there are now wonderful studies that are showing that actually impedes or reduces or any kind of objective measure of performance. That doing two things at once detracts from the quality of either of the one. Doing 5 things at once, or being that scattered in your mind, you don't even have to be doing anything, but when you're at the mercy of this kind of mind wandering all the time and you're trying to get things done, it's very, very challenging. Very challenging. So the question is there a way to actually live that will allow us to deal with what Zorba the Greek in Kazantzakis' novel, a movie called The Full Catastrophe of the Human Condition. The good, the bad, the ugly, the unwanted, the feared, the traumatic, the awful. And to be able to hold each moment in its fullness and allow our attention faculty and our awareness faculty to actually hold it in such a way that we can then inhabit the next moment with authenticity and maybe even respond appropriately to this vast range of demands that we're faced with all the time. Now, when I started the stress reduction clinic back at the University of Massachusetts back in 1979, and I did bring some slides, which I don't know if I'll show you, but I'll just sort of take that moment by moment. Maybe I'll show them to you, maybe I won't. Because I'm trying to actually create more of an impression. I don't want to leave you just with things in your head, just facts, okay? Because you'll lose them immediately, okay? Because other facts will come in and, whatever. If you've spent time and energy getting here, and I've spent time and energy getting here, then what would make me feel most satisfied is if, one, you had some kind of inkling why you came today. I'm sure you all do. It's a mystery, though, I'm sure. Hoping maybe to be entertained, or maybe to connect on some deeper level, or maybe you practice mindfulness, or maybe you've been to an MBSR program. But if you peel back all those layers, there's some really, 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 really interesting reason why you're here. And I'll bet you don't know what it is. I'm not joking. Because there are intelligences at work that are just deeper than the thought function. And the thought function is so smart that it sometimes outsmarts us completely. Have you noticed that? And then it's like we're stupid. We're so smart, we're stupid. It's very hard to see that in yourself, but you can see it in other people just really easily. Maybe you've noticed that. So I'm going to try to weave together a whole bunch of things that probably none of it's going to make complete sense, but what I'm doing here is I'm trying to, in some sense, plant seeds. I'm trying to plant seeds in the fertile ground or garden of whatever it was that brought you here, so that when you leave here, something has been touched that will keep those seeds that actually I'm not planting, they are already in you. Keep them being watered, nurtured, protected, privileged in a certain way, so that it nurtures, in some profound sense, some aspect of you that wants to be as alive as you can be while you have the chance. We say to people coming to our stress reduction clinic, and they come with every conceivable kind of human ailment, referred by every conceivable subspecialty and specialty and generalist in medicine. And we say to them, and it's an 8-week-long course designed to teach you how to take better care of yourself as a complement to whatever the healthcare system is, I should call it a disease care system, by the way, can do with you, can do for you. And we say to them, from our perspective, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what's wrong with you. Okay? No matter what's wrong with you. Okay? And we see people you would not want to be in their body, or in their mind, or in their life. And they probably wouldn't want to be in yours either, but you probably wouldn't want to hear that. Because after all, I mean, you're the star of this movie, aren't you? So there's more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what's wrong with you. That's a radical perspective. And very, very important, because, I started the stress reduction clinic in 1979. In 1979, a Surgeon General's report came out called Healthy People. And what it was saying is, forecasting into the future, which is here now, we're in this future, that no matter how much money America spends throwing money at health and health care, it will never be enough to have health. Because there's a missing ingredient, and that's the humans that the health care is supposed to care for. And that there's not enough money on the planet to do all the various things that would have to be done to us when we don't take care of ourselves, when we don't know how to handle stress, when we do not know how to be in wise relationship with our lives and our lifestyle and our diet and exercise and our bodies and aging and everything else, that if we leave that all to, auto mechanics model of medicine, you drive your car around until it breaks down, then you get the carburetor replaced or the engine or whatever, or the tires. But this is not a machine. Okay? I know a lot of people, even in biology, love to use machine analogies and even nano machine analogies about the body. And to a degree, they're correct. But there's another piece of it, like no one understands the construction of the machine that's you. I'll give you one example. How many of you see that slide up there? And what's the color of the background? Blue. Does everybody agree that it's blue? No one knows how you do that. No one knows how you go from the wavelength of electromagnetic radiation in the blue region, okay, in the visible spectrum. No one knows how you go from this wavelength, which is colorless, it's just energy, to a subjective feeling of blue. And we also really don't know, we have a consensus reality that agrees that the blue that you're seeing and the blue that I'm seeing are the same blue, but it's not always true, and it's not true for colorblind people. In the blue-green color. Okay, so there's a lot of kind of consensus agreement here, but the brain weighs approximately 3 pounds, okay? And it's all cells and cables that are made up of cells, neurons, and then all these glial cells in there supporting the neurons, and incredibly specialized. I mean, it's really the most complex assembly of matter in the known by us universe, right inside your little old body. And no one knows how sentience, how consciousness, how knowing, how even thinking arises in this 3 pounds of what some neuroscientists call meat. It's a little distasteful. But, to just kind of make it graphic. So if you forget every once in a while walking around on the Dartmouth campus or in Hanover or wherever you happen to live, that you're a miraculous being, well, okay, it's just one more mind wandering, one more default sort of not really being aware of how amazing it is that you can see, for instance, that you can hear, that you can taste. How many of us eat food and we don't bother to taste it, we just devour it? Or we taste the idea of the food. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, but you didn't actually taste it. Have you ever had a mindless hug from somebody who was really trying to be friendly? Sort of impulse to be friendly, but not in one's body. Okay? So all of these things we take for granted, but we can actually begin a process of reminding, and I put a little hyphen in there, reminding ourselves, rebodying ourselves. When? Now, because why? It's the only time you have. And coming back into a certain kind of vector or alignment with the entire life trajectory. Entire life trajectory. And it doesn't matter how old you are when you begin this process. The Native Americans actually measured your age from when you became, they started to measure your age from when you became a grandparent. Before that, it was like you were too busy to really be human. And the Asian Indians measure your age from when you start practicing yoga. So if you're 75 years old and you've been into yoga for 3 months, you're 3 months old. I like that. Isn't that nice? What about a new beginning? Every moment, a new beginning. That's what mindfulness is about. Every moment fresh. Now, this is not a philosophy. It's not a good idea. It's not a concept. It's a way of being. It's not a technique. It's not a technique, and it's not a special state. Oh, I think I'll trot over to the MBSR clinic, meditate. Maybe you're waiting for something else to happen, but nothing else happens. Nothing else happens. This is it, you know? It's like, goodbye. Maybe you're hoping for something special to happen. Some special meditative state, some kind of vision, some kind of alignment of the, spheres. Some special bolt of lightning out of the blue to wake you up. This is a mistake, a miss-take on meditation, on mindfulness, on reality. Let's just pretend. Okay, why don't we just sit for a moment? You're already sitting. You don't even need to shift your posture, although I see some people getting ready. Okay, now we're going to get into it. It's going to be somewhat experiential, thank God. He could talk forever. But you see, you don't even have to shift your posture to be awake or to be aware. You could do it like this and really be aware. And by the way, I can't see my hands, but I know where they are. How do I know? A sense called proprioception. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. But there are a lot more than 5 senses. I just want to put that out, okay? When we're talking about miraculous being or genius, it's got lots of different dimensions to it, many. If I ask you, how are you in the elevator, and you say, fine, how do you know? Aside from the fact that you're probably not fine, but you just don't want to go into it in the elevator with somebody you don't want to tell anyway. But when, you're sort of, a friend asks you, how are you? And you say, fine. How do you know? That's another sense. And you know very quickly. And you know when you're not, too. What is that knowing called? It's not, well, let me think. I don't know. How am I? No, you know instantly. That sense is called interoception. There are ways that the organism has, using the brain and the nervous system, which has lots of maps, by the way. The brain is loaded with maps of the body. Loaded with maps of the body. And not just the somatosensory cortices, but the insula and the cerebellum and the hippocampus. I mean, lots and lots of... And again, I stress, we're beginning to understand something about what lights up when you meditate, and when you do this and do that, when you go into depression. All sorts of wonderful, wonderful things happening in brain research and neuroscience nowadays. But still, no one knows how it all comes together. In you, in this moment, in a way that actually you don't have to think about. And even if there's something going on, even if you're in, say, pain from your lower back, and you've had it for a long time, or even if you have, cancer at the moment, or you're a cancer survivor, or whatever it is, or you have, heart, issues of one kind or another, whatever it is, the sum total of this universe of between 10 and 100 trillion cells, the whole body now we're talking about, is good enough to have gotten you here today. It's good enough for now. And the more energy you pour into it, the more that robustness, whatever it is, sometimes called homeostasis, but it's a very dynamical process that we call health, as opposed to disease or disease. When we start to pour attention energy in the form of attention into what's already right with us, it turns out that the body has its ear to the rail, the brain has its ear to the rail, the brain is part of the rail, the heart, every aspect of our being is one integrated whole. It's not like different systems. The immune system talks to the nervous system. The nervous system talks right back. And everybody else is listening in on the conversation. And it's all cells. And if you took your liver, if we all took our livers and put them out on the stage here, that would be an interesting exercise. And then we shuffled them around, and then you were all encouraged to just pick yours up on the way out. You wouldn't know which was yours. You can look at all 100 trillion of these cells in your body, and your name isn't on any of it. It's like, oh, here's my liver. Here's my gallbladder. This is the punctuation from the cell phones is actually really, if that it was a cell phone, it's really interesting. But do you hear what I'm saying? I mean, even the question of who we are, when you start to actually ask it with tremendous authenticity, it might not be so facile to just say your name, or even describe what you do, or even send in your CV. If you've ever hired people, you know the CV is not the person, and you hire the CV a lot of the time, big mistake. Because you can't work with the person a lot of the time. What you want is congruence, you want integration. So when we take our seat, so to speak, what we're actually engaging in is a recognition of how integrated we already are. We don't need to, oh, I'm such a wreck, I got to get integrated. No. From this perspective, you're already as integrated as you're going to be in this moment. Is it enough? Is it good enough? So let's actually take a moment. I've even brought another prop. I've brought some bells. We don't need the bells, but I'll ring them. And when I ring them, why don't, just for fun, you don't have to shift your posture, but just for fun, why don't you shift your posture and sit in a posture that for now embodies dignity, whatever that means for you. Look, the entire room is moving. It's not that dignified, I guess. All right, but actually it doesn't matter. The posture is secondary. What's most important is the inner orientation, the willingness to open to the present moment, to put out the welcome mat, and to let the idea that, oh, now we're going to do something special, drop. Because as soon as you sort of plant that seed, now we're going to do something special, and we're going to experience something special, then you'll be on the lookout for something special. But you see, nothing special. There's a wonderful cartoon in the New Yorker that I actually mentioned in a long time ago, in Wherever You Go, There You Are, with two Zen monks, one obviously elder, the other young, and the young one's looking up quizzically at the older one, and the caption underneath, the older one speaking, saying, "Nothing happens next, this is it." I just said that to you earlier. But the "this is it" is really important. Otherwise, you could spend 20 or 30 years or more, and people do this, meditating, trying to get someplace else. Trying to have some special experience. That's what it's all about. Now I'm enlightened. The problem is you're already enlightened, but the personal pronoun that wants to grab it and say, I'm enlightened, it's the personal pronoun that's the problem, not the enlightenment. Your eyes are already enlightened. Your ears are already enlightened. Your belly is already enlightened. Your feet actually do what they're supposed to do for the most part. Your brain is actually doing what it's supposed to do. Your liver is doing what it's supposed to do. A very famous scientist and physician named Lewis Thomas once said he'd rather be at the controls of a 747 trying to land with no pilot training whatsoever than at the controls of his own liver for 30 seconds. So you don't need to find special. this is good enough. Okay? So let's actually sit for a moment if you're sitting, or stand if you're standing, in a posture that for you at this moment embodies wakefulness and dignity. You don't even have to close your eyes, but you can if you like, or let them fall unfocused on the chair in front of you or whatever. And as I ring the bells, seeing if you can just follow the sound of the bells into the space of the air. And allowing the space of the air to be coextensive with the space, you could call it, of awareness. So that there's simply awareness. Hearing what's here to be heard. The sound of the bells are past, and now there's just sound, whatever's arising. And you could feature hearing as a way of anchoring our attention. You can focus on some object, or field of objects like hearing, and just rest in being aware of sounds and the stillness, the silence in between, inside, and underneath any and all sounds, including, of course, my voice. Alternatively, because there's more than one thing going on, there's not just hearing going on, there's also seeing and smelling, and all the senses are actually operating. Seeing if you can actually, instead of hearing, feature for now a feeling, a sense of the breath moving in and out of your body, wherever it's most vivid in the body. Just allowing awareness to inhabit the whole of the body and be most vivid in the region where the breath sensations are arising and passing away. In breath, out breath. And seeing if you can ride on the waves of the breath with full awareness, moment by moment by moment. And noticing any time the mind goes off and gets involved in anything else, including judging how stupid this is. We came for a talk and all of a sudden we're doing this stupid exercise. Or whatever is flitting through the mind at the moment, just making it so spacious that you can see whatever's unfolding, hear my guidance as I'm speaking, and at the same time ride on the wave of the breath coming in and the breath going out with full awareness. And a kind of interest, a kind of, in some sense, affectionate attention. Even if the breath isn't all that interesting to you or all that boring, or or your mind says, okay, I get that concept, what else? Just staying with the breath. And then playing with the possibility of expanding the field of awareness around the breath, wherever you're experiencing it most in the body, until it includes a sense of the body as a whole, sitting here or standing here, breathing. And noticing you can do that just easy as pie. It's not really a doing, but when I say it, you can easily, the awareness can hold the whole body to one degree or another. And whatever degree you can hold it, that's fine. It's not like, oh, if I practiced, I'd get better at this. That's just a thought, never mind. Just letting the thoughts come and go and staying with the awareness of the body as a whole, sitting and breathing. And if possible, remembering that this isn't some simple little exercise that we're doing in the middle of a talk. That this is your life unfolding in this very moment. And this breath is important to you. You wouldn't want to do without it. So with that kind of quality of attending, that it's not really, it's like tuning a guitar string, too loose, no true tone, too tight, no true tone. But if you can just bring the lightest of touches of awareness to the sense of the body as a whole, breathing. As if it mattered. And of course it does. Because it's your body in this moment, it's your life, and the breath is vital. And then one more before we end. Noticing any thoughts that may be moving through your mind, and noticing how easy it is to self-distract, that the mind does wander, and it wanders away from the breath. If we did this for any period of time, sooner or later your mind would be someplace else, probably not even in the room, maybe not even in the present moment. You'd be having dinner in Paris, or Bangkok, or in an argument 3 years ago, in the shower with yourself. So when you notice the mind is self-distracted, no problem, no judging, or if you judge it, don't judge the judging, and just see if you can come back to this moment in awareness, featuring whatever object of attention you care to. It could be anything that's in the field of awareness. But the last little piece is to just underscore that none of this is about the sound of the bells. None of this is about the feeling of the breath in the body. None of this is about the thoughts moving through the mind. Those are all important and they're secondary, but what it's really about is the awareness that knows the sound when it comes to the ears, that knows, and I mean non-conceptually knows, not just conceptually, knows the feeling of the breath moving in the body. Non-conceptually inhabits the body as a whole in awareness, sitting and breathing. Non-conceptually knows when the mind self-distracts, or when we get into an emotional whirlpool or turbulence of some kind or another. And the awareness can just allow it to just be here, feature it center stage, let it come, let it go. And meanwhile, we just continue to rest in awareness, outside of time, because the present moment is timeless in some profound way. And awareness and silence and stillness are all different ways of saying the same thing, of pointing to something that's already yours, that you don't have to get, but has tremendous healing potential, tremendous potential for learning, for seeing things in new ways, for that rotation in consciousness that I was speaking of. Everything's the same, only nothing's the same. Why? Because you showed up in your fullness. So learning, and out of that learning, growing. And out of that growing, healing, which in my vocabulary, the way I define healing is coming to terms with things as they are. Coming to terms with things as they are. Very different from curing. There are very few cures in medicine, but the opportunity for healing, as long as there's breath, it's in some sense already here. All we need to do is see it, feel it, live it. And it's not about denying pain and suffering. It's about, in some sense, befriending even that. So resting for a final few moments in stillness, in silence, full in wakefulness, in full awareness. Outside of time, as if you had nothing to do, no place to go, nothing to do, and nothing to attain. Because you're already whole. The root meaning, by the way, of the words health and healing, and even the word holy, H-O-L-Y. And by the same token, the word medicine and the word meditation, they grow out of the same tree, same root, Indo-European root. Medicine and meditation are joined at the hip. So it's not so radical to actually bring them together in mainstream clinical care. In fact, it's essential for caring. So silent wakefulness. Attending to what is. So now the real meditation practice never stops. Just because some bells got rung, just because we're going to shift gears a little bit. The real meditation practice is how you live your life from moment to moment. It's not how good you are sitting without moving, or what great yoga poses you do, because yoga is itself a meditation, a beautiful form of meditation that we use enormously and to good purpose in MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. I'd like to just say a few things about stress and medicine, and then open it up to, and give you a little bit more of an expanse of how we work. But I wanted you to have at least this taste of it, and I want to share a couple of poems with you. And it's not like all of a sudden I've gotten a little weird on, I'm going a little weird on you. How many of you, when you heard the word poetry or poems, you go, yeah, oh no, not a poem. It's like, I don't understand those things. That's not uncommon. But one of my colleagues, John Teasdale, with whom I wrote that book, The Mindful Way Through Depression, who is like one of the world's great cognitive scientists, is coming out with several papers in which he's arguing that the root cause of suffering in human beings is not knowing how to deal with our emotions, because we don't know how to inhabit and then shift our relationship to what he calls implicational meaning. Implicational meaning is what moves, say, in poetry. Okay? It's different from the propositional meaning, which is just the kind of bare facts. Okay? So if I'll recite a poem for you. This is a poem by Antonio Machado, who's a great Spanish poet of the turn of the 19th to 20th century, and won the Nobel Prize. It's very short, but see if you can feel it. The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. In exchange for the odor of my jasmine, I would like the odor of your roses. I have no roses. All the flowers in my garden are dead. Can you feel that? And how many times have we had that feeling? Or a similar feeling? I have no roses. There's nothing beautiful about me. All the flowers in my garden are dead. Well then, I'll take the withered petals and the yellowed leaves and the waters in the fountain. And the wind left, and I wept. And I said to myself, what have you done to the garden that was entrusted to you? Can you feel that? This is a poem about great sadness. Could easily go into depression. I actually, just because a Nobel laureate doesn't mean, I like to actually change the last line. And I would suggest that for our purposes, rather than, what have you done to the garden that was entrusted to you, which is a kind of blaming, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's like, stick the knife in and then, right, as long as I'm feeling down, why not just go right over the edge? And a lot of cultures actually perpetrate that kind of perspective. But instead, why don't we say, what are we doing with the gardens that are entrusted to us? Gardens, plural, okay? Because right now we have a lot of gardens entrusted to us, I would say. The closest to us is, I would say, the garden of the body. Better than an American Express credit card. You can't leave home without it. But a lot of the time, we're not even in the body. And a lot of the time, our feelings about the body are so negative that, the less said, the better. Just don't bother me about the body. I don't even want to know it exists. If it is not driving me crazy, I feel lucky. And James Joyce is famous for starting out a short story in Dubliners with the following sentence. This is an approximation, but it's, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body. And if you start to pay attention in the way that I'm suggesting, in the present moment, you'll discover that that's your address as well. A lot of the time, we're in our heads, lost in thought, someplace else, not in the body. That has biological consequences, by the way. Everything I've said tonight, when I started the stress reduction clinic in 1979, it was like there was almost no science of the effects of stress and the biology of stress on the body and on the mind and on the brain and on the heart. Now, the data is just overwhelming, including, as I'll show you in a minute, aging. That it's turning out that, stress, they used to say stress is not a real risk factor for morbidity or mortality because, it's not like, high-fat diet, it's not like cigarette smoking, it's not like hypertension, high blood pressure. But now it turns out there's incontrovertible evidence that stress actually increases the rate of degradation of the the ends of all of our chromosomes, which are called telomeres. You're going to hear a lot more about that word. The woman, Liz Blackburn at UCSF, who actually discovered telomerase, which is the enzyme that builds them back up, won the Nobel Prize in 2008. Okay? And her lab is studying the effects of mindfulness on telomeres and telomerase. And the evidence is moving in the direction of meditation can actually enhance telomerase. And not just that, it's more than meditation or mindfulness. It's your attitude towards what's happening. It's not like these people aren't under a huge amount of stress, but it's never the stress. It's how you choose to be in relationship to it. And if you have really exhausted your resources for handling stress, then of course, yeah, all bets are off. But if you know how to draw resources to yourself, then even under very, very high levels of stress, you can dance with the energies. Sometimes it's unbelievably painful, but nevertheless, you're much bigger even than the pain and suffering, and liberate yourself from that. And guess what? The telomeres get longer. So every aspect of our biology is what's now called plastic. And that's a new terminology. It's not like, Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. This is for the older people in the room. But it means that our biology is miraculous in another way. It's constantly reorganizing itself. It's not just it's all downhill from here. Yes, there is aging. Yes, we are all going to die unless somebody makes a very important discovery very quickly. But, the question is not, is there life after death, or is there some way to escape death, but actually, can we live while we have a chance? Is there life before death? That's the most interesting question. And right up to the moment of death. And a lot of time I think that really when we talk about fear of death, we're really more afraid of life than we are of death. And there are two chapters. I was going to actually tell you some stories, but I don't think I will, about my early days at MIT, one of which was how I got into meditation. I got into meditation at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology as a graduate student in molecular biology with a Nobel laureate. Believe it or not, go figure. Not in some monastery in Asia. Because the Zen master came and gave a talk, actually, at MIT. And I was one of 5 people in all of MIT that went to the talk and took the head off, took the top off my head at the age of 22. And it was like, oh my God, there's an entirely different way of knowing. Why didn't they tell us this in kindergarten? An entirely different way of knowing, and no less beautiful, no less profound, no less transformative than thought. Just different. And this should be part of the repertoire, so to speak, and part of the science and investigation. The other thing was the story of my thesis defense, because I wrote, a thesis on some arcane topic in molecular biology, and I had, it's like all these MIT Nobel laureate types, real hotshot molecular biologists, and a few from Harvard who came over because you always have to have someone from another institution. And my thesis, it was an existential challenge for me. I don't know how many of you are graduate students here? Anybody a graduate student? It's like hard. Hard to be a graduate student because nobody cares. And most of the time you don't either, but it could be really humiliating and and then of course if you're a scientist, science is 99% failure. Which doesn't do that much for, your self-esteem, so to speak. And then you're looking for that 1%. And so I finally got my thesis together, and I wrote in the front page, on a page by itself, they let you have a little dedication, a little sayings or something like that. I wrote, "He who dies before he dies does not die when he dies." I don't even know where I got it, it's like... it was some Greek, very old Greek. So I put that line in the first, page by itself before you get into the thesis and so on. So I go into the room with all these scientists who are going to decide whether I get my doctorate or not after what's called I don't know even, I forgot what they even call it, but a thesis review or, defense, right, defense, it's a war term. Yeah. They're going to attack and I'm going to defend, and if I do it well enough, then, so I go in there and, I knew them all because it's just a small community and everybody, sort of likes each other, but I was, of course, terrified. I mean, it's like a lot hangs in the balance. And so somebody says, what's this, he who dies before he dies does not die when he dies? This is the first question on my thesis. So I've worked 5 years on this research, and they want to know, he who dies before he dies. Of course, they were pushing 50. I was 27 or something like that. They were in their 50s and, thinking ahead. That obviously piqued some interest. You die before you die, you don't die when you die. I want that. So I said, do you really want to know? And they all said, yeah. So I said, well, it might take some time. They said, we've got time. So actually, I would say half of my thesis defense was actually unpacking what mindfulness is about to these guys. This was in 1971, by the way. And I wrote it up. It's a chapter called Dying Before You Die, Duh, because the first Dying Before You Die was the other story that I told about, first encountering meditation at MIT. So that's just to say that I didn't want to continue a career in molecular biology. I wanted to bring my training as a scientist together with my training in meditation because it seemed like, well, everybody's doing the science, but nobody's paying attention to the balance between thought and this other function of our brains and nervous system that no one's paying attention to, called awareness, that is patently, obviously bigger than thought, because whatever thought you have or whatever emotion you have, you could embrace it in awareness and not have to do anything with it, but it would change by virtue of simply holding it in awareness if you were patient enough to do it, especially if it didn't feel good. And so that's what we teach now, and it's come into the mainstream of medicine in ways that are really astonishing. The National Institutes of Health is funding hundreds of studies on mindfulness to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. And the idea that that would have been the case in 1979, I like to say more improbable than that the Big Bang would just all of a sudden stop and implode back on itself. And yet it's happening. And so mindfulness is now in the mainstream of medicine. And in the last, so I'll just show you some pictures before we go to questions, okay? Would that be all right with you? Are you still awake? Good, because you don't ever have to stop, even when you go to sleep. I mean, that it's being present. That's all. Being fully present, okay? Is anybody good at this? No, okay? So don't make oh, I'm no good at this. Nobody's any good at it. But all you need to do is be a little bit better than automatic pilot, and your life will rotate. I mean, it will be very, very different. And every time anger comes up, the default mode comes up, whether it's anger or anything else. Thich Nhat Hanh likes to say, the reason we have to practice mindfulness, the reason we have to cultivate it intentionally, is that we're busy cultivating the opposite all day long. Cultivating anger, cultivating jealousy, cultivating, sort of low self-esteem, cultivating, all sorts of negativity in the emotional domain or in the thought domain. And the people who are doing the telomere research are saying that their research is showing that the real stress comes from thinking. So this is a biological and molecular biological consequence that accelerates aging and accelerates a lot of heart disease. I mean, you can't interview people who die of sudden cardiac death. But if you could, you'd find out, like, probably it was a thought that did it. The wrong thought at the wrong time, dead. I'm actually not joking. I mean, it's so serious that we need to laugh. And I want to say that about meditation, too. It may have seemed like I'm not taking this stuff seriously. This stuff is so serious that it's too serious to take too seriously. And I'm serious. So this is, if any of you were alive back then, this is the cover of Time magazine back in 1983, 4 years after I'd started the stress reduction clinic. And it's just like, I look back on that time and I say, stress? What stress? Compared to now. I mean, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no instant messaging, there were no computers except mainframes. I used to say in the early 80s that I could get more work once I had my first PC, which was like gigantic, that I could get more work done in a month than I could get more work done in a day than I used to be able to get done in a month. Well, that was in the mid-'80s. Now it's like I can get more work done in a day than I could get done in a year. That's not so good. We're always on. We're always on. Not so good. We're not computer servers, we're human beings. So here is the evidence from Liz Blackburn's lab and Alyssa Eppel, who is the mindfulness researcher in her lab, Proceedings in National Academy of Sciences, showing telomere length as a function of years of chronicity of caregiving of children. This is parents with children with severe medical and disabilities. Okay? So it's like an unavoidable stress. You can't just walk out on your chest, I don't do stress, sorry, goodbye, children. No, you can't do that. But look at this, also in that study. This is a perceived stress scale. It's the perception of stress that makes the difference. If you are just dealing with it because it's the way it is, then you can be more transparent to the stress. Your telomeres are longer. If you take everything personally, your telomeres degrade. So if you want one take-home message from this turns out to be harder to enact than it is to say. Don't take things personally when they're not personal. Okay? Then you might ask, well, when are they not personal? That's a good question to keep asking yourself. It may be they're never personal. It may be that the you that you think you are is not the real you, that you're much bigger. And now the neuroscience is actually showing that. You want to be your narrative self? Fine. Then you're using certain regions of the brain. You want to be your direct moment-by-moment experiential self, grounded in the body? You're using lateral networks in the brain, a whole different brain profile. So you choose. One is related more to happiness. The left activation in the prefrontal cortex, if you put monks in the scanners, and I'll show you some pictures of that, they have tremendous activation in the left prefrontal cortex, in particular regions that have to do with approach and that have to do with emotional balance. And when we train people in MBSR, they shift from right activation to left activation in 8 weeks. Okay? Their brains actually change structure in 8 weeks. Work out of Sarah Lazar's lab, a German postdoctoral fellow who's training with us in MBSR and has been our student, Britta Herzl, for years from Germany, young neuroscientist, has demonstrated that major regions of the brain change with 8 weeks of mindfulness training in MBSR, including the hippocampus, including the cerebellum, including the posterior cingulate cortex. All of these are involved in making meaning, in self-regulation, in perception, decoding, memory, and learning. Not bad for 8 weeks of what looks a lot, if you were looking in from the outside on our patients, looks a lot like nothing. They do nothing lying down. Then they do nothing sitting. Then they do nothing walking, like this, like the Night of the Living Dead, really slow meditative walking. They're doing nothing, and healthcare is paying for it. Amazing. How did they pull that off? And it turns out the brains are changing not just in terms of activity, in terms of structure. Significant thickening in those regions I mentioned, significant thinning in the amygdala, which is the emotional reactivity center, the threat center that fires off all the time whenever we feel threatened or, accosted in one way or another. So, God, I got a whole talk here that I'm not going to give. How many of you see a triangle? Raise your hands if you see a triangle in this picture. Okay, now keep your hands up there. Okay. Now, look around so that you know you're not alone. If you see a triangle in that picture, it's interesting because there's no triangle in that picture. A triangle is defined by a three-sided figure, and what your mind does is it puts in the sides. If we shifted that little Pac-Man the tiniest little bit, so the mind can actually see things that are not there. The brain actually does that. It's so good at that. If I had time, I would show you this movie, which... How many of you have seen this image? Yeah, you can't use it anymore, but I'll just play it anyway. Whoops. Doesn't want to do that. Let me see. Anyway, it's a movie, and they're passing around basketballs, and you ask the room to sort of count the number of times the people in the white shirts pass the basketballs. And I could get it to work, but it would take too long. So, and in the middle of it, I'll try one more time, in the middle of it, because it's, oh, no. Okay, so you're counting the number of times the people in the white shirts are passing the basketballs, one basketball per each, the whites and the blacks. And then in the middle, this gorilla comes out. And then goes off to the other side. But when you ask people, to count the number of times the people in the white shirts pass the basketball, they don't actually see the gorilla. If we did it and none of you had seen it, 95% of people would have counted the number of times the people pass the basketball. Usually you get a Poisson distribution, so you can't even count correctly. But then you don't see the gorilla. Why? Because the mind has told itself, the brain has told itself, the white shirts are what's important. Tune out everything that's not white. Well, the brain, it turns out, is fantastic. I just showed you, it sees things that aren't there, and it doesn't see things that are there. Not very reliable. Now, does that apply to you? I'll leave that for you to decide. Just ask your spouse or your mother or your father, because that is part of the default mode. We are out of touch, seriously out of touch with a lot of different elements of this. And this is just a quote from William James that basically saying if we could learn how to bring the mind back when it was wandering, that would be a good thing. It turns out the Buddhists have been doing that for thousands of years. So I'm going to stop actually at this point and take a few questions. We have some time for questions, and then we'll stop for the evening. Obviously, you could see that I've just gotten started. I hope you've just gotten started. I'm not joking, because this doesn't stop. It's called your life, and it's all really more than magnificent. And if you can get into that implicational meaning of the poems, the poetry, then there's the potential to actually live your life as if it really mattered moment by moment. And it turns out that that's recruiting and morphing brain pathways that when you're depressed and you're into depressive rumination, it's not about shutting that stuff off, that kind of toxic thought stream, but actually learning how to hold it differently, and then you don't take it personally, and then you actually don't fall into depression. You don't relapse into depression, and I'm talking major depressive disorder. And so, and that affects your telomeres, and that affects actually gene expression in your body, upregulating and downregulating hundreds of genes that have to do with cancer and that have to do with inflammatory responses. So if your whole body is really plastic, and the more you tune the mind and the body together, the more you participate in your own health and well-being. I like to call the medicine of the future, or the medicine of the present actually, participatory medicine. That's what, because there's not enough money to fund medicine if we just use the auto mechanics model. So we need to all participate. And isn't it interesting that in order to participate, the greatest evidence is suggesting we need to go back to ancient practices from very, very old traditions that are mostly not from this side of the planet, but that it turns out have deep, deep connections with our culture and with our nervous system and with our love. So I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm open to having a few questions. Thank you, love. Yeah, thank you for your attention. And it's 6 o'clock,
if you
so we
need
don't...
to go, we understand.
Yeah,
and
obviously,
so
it's 6 o'clock.
There is a book signing following outside the auditorium after the question and answer period, just so people know.
And so why don't we, okay, so you've got it, why don't you line up with that microphone behind the guy who has it, and we've got another one over here. So go ahead. Oh, are you not, you're not actually asking a question, you're just offering them. Well, give it to her.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that talk. It was fascinating. One question I had was actually from your biography that was provided, which was just talking about you and your wife's interest in supporting initiatives that further mindfulness in K-12 education.
Yes.
And I wondered if you could just provide some examples of what exactly that can look like in public education and beyond.
Okay, thank you for that question. I alluded to it, but obviously, you know, the subject of mindfulness is so vast, and to do it in a way that isn't just throwing facts at you would take actually multiple occasions. Or you can remember what we touched on today and then find out more for yourself, which is really the best part. But in the book that my wife and I, Mila and I, wrote together on mindful parenting, which is a whole other story, there's a chapter in there about a 4th and 5th grade teacher from a Utah public school who herself experienced mindfulness in MBSR for medical reasons, health reasons, and then brought it into her classroom against all of my advice in Mormon, Utah, and it transformed the entire school. So you could start there. You can also Google mindfulness in education. You'll find out there are groups of teachers in lots of different places that are doing this. And if you want to take a trip up 89 to South Burlington, Vermont, I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and they are doing amazing things in that school system. The superintendent and one of the principals actually came to a day-long mindfulness retreat that I did for the teachers, and there are hundreds of teachers bringing mindfulness into their curriculum at every age. So there's a lot to be said about it. I think it's one of the best things to happen in modern education, and it's really inspiring the teachers because nowadays it's so challenging and there's so much stress in that profession, and so many of the kids come and they're not ready to learn, so they need to learn how to learn, tuning the instrument before you play it, so to speak, and this is a way to actually allow that to happen, and in a way that I've been in classrooms like this in Oakland and in Manhattan, New York City, on public schools, unbelievable. I mean, and one teacher in South Burlington called it pin drop moment. You could hear a pin drop in these classes where a lot of the kids are like ordinarily all over the place, but they have learned how to actually drop in. It's valuable for attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it's also valuable for the teacher's sanity. Thank you. So.
Hello. I was just wondering what your general advice would be when we're trying to, live it moment by moment, but we're faced with moments where we have to make decisions. And I know we have to make like dozens of decisions every day, and sometimes there are big decisions regarding like our futures or personal relationships. And my friends are always telling me like, don't overthink it. But I mean,
Don't overthink it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I know it's really difficult. So
Well, it's a great question. Now you want an answer?
yeah. I realize that's the reason why I decided to come today.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. You're probably going to overthink it, but you can hold that in awareness, the overthinking, and the awareness will actually take care of you. A lot of times, let's say if it's relationships, you mentioned relationships, is that right? And it's very complicated, and mindfulness is all about relationships. We start with the body. What's my relationship with my body? It's pretty weird even to say, I have a relationship with my body. Who's talking? Oh, you're not your body, but you have a body. Oh, yeah? So there's something even there that we don't know a lot more than we let on. Okay, then you have a relationship with your mind and your heart. In all Asian languages, as you may know, the word for mind and word for heart is the same word. So when you hear the word mindfulness, if you're not hearing heartfulness, you're not really understanding it. It's got this tenor of spaciousness of heart. Okay? So, and inside of that, a certain kind of trust. And trust in what? How about your own beauty? Okay? So when you start to know yourself in that kind of non-conceptual way, not with thinking, but through embodied awareness of sensation and of, hearing and smelling and tasting and so forth, and of your thoughts that are overthinking who to be in relationship with or who to break off a relationship with or whatever it is, and you're not judging that whole thing, your deeper intuition and wisdom is trustworthy. And when you get into trouble, that's trustworthy too, because you see, oh, I see, I made this kind of decision, I overthought it to this degree, and I wound up whammo, in some place I didn't want to be. That's important information. That's useful data. Then you learn from that, and the next time, if you're really, 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 really mindful, you won't repeat the same pattern. But mostly what we do is repeat the same old pattern over and over and over again, because we're attracted to just those people who are not so healthy for us. If you've read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, which I recommend you read for these kinds of things, he talks about a kind of construct called the pain body. So a lot of falling in love is like, if you start to look at it, it's like my pain body, what's all knotted up and painful and hurt in me, recognizes what's all knotted up and painful and hurt in you, and those pain bodies fall in love. Meanwhile, not a good idea, because it's what you'd call a dysfunctional relationship from the start, But the awareness can see that, and it can save you. I have a friend at MIT, one of the graduate students with me in my lab, and he decided to get married at one point. And the only time I've ever done this, I gave somebody advice about who they wanted to marry. And I said, don't do it. I was young and arrogant, so I said, don't do it. He did it anyway, of course. He got married. 3 years later, they got divorced. And he said to me later, he said, how come it took you 3 seconds to see what it took me 3 years to see? And I said, well, that's because, I wasn't in it. To see it when you're in it, that requires a whole different rotation in consciousness. But it is trustworthy. So there's no answer to your question. It's life unfolding. And whether it's your relationship to another person or whether it's choosing courses or a career path or anything like that, trust your love. And as, what's his name? Joseph Campbell said, and this is a really good piece of advice, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. And it will teach you everything you need to know, including how sometimes following your bliss needs to be modulated a little bit. I hope that helps because I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you.
People are saying that life is more complicated and more stressful now, and I would believe it. I don't have anything to measure it against, but and also the same with war, that people go to war and they come back having experienced things that they might not have lived through in other wars. And there are scientists working on PTSD and trying to help people heal from those things that they might not have lived through. And so sometimes I think about how like if the world is becoming more stressful or complicated, and our answer is change yourself, change your relationship with that stress. It seems, I'm not sure, it seems, I don't know how to say it, but...
I got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, that's the other half of my talk.
All right.
So thank you for bringing that up. So let me just very quickly say, this isn't about changing yourself. It's about, it's exactly the opposite of changing yourself. It's recognizing the beauty in yourself already. No change necessary. Now imagine if the Congress actually were mindful. Okay? Actually, there is a congressman in the Congress now, Tim Ryan from the 17th District in Ohio, who is doing everything he can to bring mindfulness into the mainstream in political and economic circles. Okay? You'll see his name around from time to time. Fifth-term congressman. But the much larger thing, and I wrote 100 pages about mindful politics and coming to our senses. This is not about forgetting about social change or transformation, but in order to really have profound social change that's in alignment with humanity and with kindness, we have to look at our own minds, because even the social change agents are driven by greed, hatred, and delusion, just like all the rest of us. Okay, so until we learn how to sort of at least recognize the toxic or the sort of acquisitive, aggressive, violent aspects in ourselves, then we can do all we want to transform the institutions and even the laws, but human beings being what they are, what we need to do is transform the species. Or I wouldn't say transform the species, I would say have the species come into its own, because we call ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens. In Latin, sapere is the verb to taste or to know, K-N-O-W. So Homo sapiens sapiens is a species that knows and knows that it knows. In other words, awareness, yes, and meta-awareness, awareness of awareness. Now, if we really, that would be wisdom. If we actually were wise, then we would see what war does to societies. We would understand that we, you know, with the kind of precocity in weapons and firepower and everything, we need to find other ways of resolving human conflict. But where's that going to come from? It's going to come out of the same human heart and the same human mind, and of corporations, which after all mean bodies, okay? The corpus, or the body politic. And that's made up of human beings. So we do need to sort of tune the instrument on lots of different levels, including the law and jurisprudence, in order to actually privilege awareness over a kind of dualistic, adversarial condition where it's really winners and losers. And a huge amount of harm and social injustice gets done, and then we learn to sort of tolerate it, thinking, well, 100 years from now, it'll be better. So this is not going to happen overnight. I have a very long time horizon. Like I like to say, one Zen master put it this way, never forget the 1,000-year view. I actually have it pretty much in the 1,000-year view. Then if it happens in 100, so much the better. Even where we would site nuclear power plants, if we were building nuclear power plants, say, in northern Japan, for instance, where would you site them, knowing the geology of the Pacific Rim in northern Japan? Oh, maybe not too close to the water. I don't know. You need an awful lot of mindfulness to actually, you know, come up with something like that. So it has infinite number of implications, and I apologize for actually not having spent more time on this talk going there. It is all in coming to our senses, and there's an awful lot happening in the world nowadays around that. So we'll take one more and then we'll stop. So, or two more. If two people are standing up, I'll take. Are you standing up for a question? You're just the microphone holder.
Yeah.
Do you want to sing or something, or just like, you got? This is your moment. I mean, American Idol.
I can make it brief.
So this will be. You want to sing?
So I'm hoping, I'm a resident at the hospital here.
Okay.
And I know you're getting involved with trying to bring this into, more mainstream medicine. And I'm hoping it's not going to be like 100,
Oh no,
150 years.
it's already in mainstream medicine.
Although the thing, what
just
I wanted
not here.
to ask you about, is that right? So I mean, it's definitely not encouraged for us to take care of ourselves, and
It
the
isn't?
amount of stresses and appointments and phone calls and now EDH and our new computer system and
I heard about that.
and 30-minute, I'm in psychiatry, and 30 minutes to adjust meds, and
right.
also the person wants to talk to me
Right.
and all of that, and it's completely stressed me out, but I can only imagine, and I have pretty great attendings and good, a great faculty, but if I were to say, you know what, I'm going to go to Shambhala to meditate, because I do meditation at Shambhala, and I've
You
read
mean
a
the
lot of...
Shambhala Mountain Center in Colorado?
Yeah, well, there's one
Or
in
here?
White River Junction. There's
Okay.
one. But I've, taken courses in like level 1 and level 2,
Yeah.
But if I were to say that, like, you know what, I'm going to go for lunch, and we're not really doing anything. I'm going to go meditate for an hour, and then I'm going to be so much more there for my patients. It probably, even with these kind, good
Attending.
mentors, it's not going to fly. And I advise my patients on these things, but still the medical professionals are
Well, you
supposed
see,
to be these superhuman people
Thank you
that
for-
I'm not,
Right. In a talk like this, I can, in some sense, only point to how deeply the penetration has gone. However, what you're saying is not deep enough by any stretch of the imagination. And it takes a long, long time to shift a culture that has its own self-interest. A long time. So one...
Just like I'm sure it takes a long time for these people to get to your clinic, because I know the chronic pain patients we're seeing, we're not advising like any of the what
Well,
you guys...
yeah, but you could set up an MBSR. I mean, maybe there is. Is there an MBSR clinic at,
not even close.
at Hitchcock? Well, that's not that radical to do. Are you in psychiatry?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's not that radical to do. Maybe medicine should do it if psychiatry has an aversion to the mind-body connection. I even know gastroenterologists who are working with veterans who have PTSD, and pulmonologists, and this transcends specialty. So
There are some, and you would hope psychiatry would be the most open to it.
Well, I don't know if I would
I
hope,
can
but
say
you
I
would
haven't
hope.
brought it
If you
up,
hope
yeah.
it, then make it happen. You see, the psychiatry of the future, where does it lie?
Not in medication.
Well, where does it lie? I'm being serious with you now.
Well, I think in the neurosciences and like
No,
things that
no,
you're...
I'm looking for something much simpler. It lies with you.
Oh,
It lies with that impulse to have come to this talk. It lies with that impulse to go to the Shambhala Center and clear your mind and then be more present. If you want the medicine of the future to be different, or the psychiatry of the future to be different, don't look around for someone else to do it.
right.
You do it. When will you be good enough? Never. Because part of your mind will tell you, you don't have enough power, you don't have enough influence, you don't have enough this. You got plenty. As a medical resident, as a psychiatry resident, you got plenty. And if people don't want to do it, that's too bad. But you can take the initiative, and I'm not joking. I mean, we're really talking about a rotation in consciousness here, and the institutions change when people are willing to actually own how you take it, and you've had enough medical training to actually be able to make cogent arguments that a lot of the way the healthcare system is set up, I'm guessing just from what you said, is toxic to the people that you're most trying to help. What kind of a setup is that? Even if you have a better medical record system.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So, okay, this will be the last one then.
Oh, no, there's somebody really ahead of me. I just wanted to let people know that we do have Upper Valley Mindfulness Associates
Wonderful.
we're psychotherapists, and we're in our 6th year of offering mindfulness-based cognitive therapy.
Wonderful. So yeah, another thing I didn't really get to
program.
talk about too much,
Yeah.
mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are resources in this area, lots of them, like the Shambhala Center. Are there any MBSR teachers here in the community? There you go. Say. Oh, wait a minute. Someone just said, no, there's nothing at Dartmouth Hitchcock. But MBSR is at Dartmouth Hitchcock?
I'm a chaplain, so I'm not a doctor.
Well, you see, the doctor doesn't, So, I mean, between the two of you, you have an insurrection. If there are, how many other people are here with that? How many are oh, so now you have a revolution. I mean, so. Listen, that's how institutions change. And you can do it with tremendous intelligence, with tremendous propriety, with tremendous intentionality and kindness, so that it's not like you're going to go and just sort of be obnoxious and tell everybody else what they're doing wrong, but to actually offer a new option that, I'm not joking, folks, people are dying for. People are dying for it, metaphorically and literally. And there's never been more scientific evidence in favor of moving in this direction. So in some sense, what I'm saying is the responsibility for the future of not only medicine, but our society is a distributive responsibility. And as I like to say, the world needs all its flowers, and you're one, whether your mind says it's like depressive rumination, he means everybody else in the room, but not me. No, I mean you. And so if you don't recognize the flower that you are and the genius that you are and the beauty that you are and take it and some place where it can illuminate some tiny little corner that may be insignificant but isn't. You think it is, but it isn't. And just apply what you care most deeply about there. That's how the care gets back into health care. We're not talking about health insurance reform, we're talking about health care reform, and we haven't seen the beginning of health care reform. And when we do, it will be a participatory medicine. It will be recruiting the interior dimensionality and resources that every single human being, by virtue of being born a human being, has to one degree or another, and that degree is huge. And we need to learn how to recruit it, because anything else will just be technology, and it will be all doing-based and none of it being-based. And we're not called human doings, we're called human beings. So at that, I'm going to stop it, because again, it's late. But thank you very much for your attention.